Hello everyone. Thank you very much. I'm a little nervous. This is me doing it for the first time, so kindly bear with me for at least 5-10 minutes before I get a little used to it. So let's begin from the very beginning. So as you know, my name is Yasharth. I've secured All India Rank 12 this year, and this day comes very rarely in somebody's life, so I'm very thank you for that. I wasn't really expecting this today, but here it is. I'm very happy that a lot of people are here, so I would be able to share my journey a little in much to a lot of people, because I know this was my third attempt, so a lot of people suffer a lot, and even I have struggled a little bit, not a little bit, I would say, lot. And when this day comes, and I hope this day comes to your life every day. You know, all of you should enjoy this day, and I try to be as honest as possible in my exposition, so I can help you as much as possible. So let's begin. So I come from Uttar Pradesh. My father is in a subordinate judiciary, so we used to get transferred a lot. So my schooling is not in one place. My schooling, I think, had faint beginnings in Ayodhya. From then we moved to Pratapgarh. From there I moved to Ghaziabad for 3 years. After that we went to Bijnor, and then I think I came to Mainpuri, and after that I came to Lucknow. In Lucknow I completed my class 10th from City Montessori School. After that, in class 10th, you know, we go through a lot of confusion कि science stream लेना है कि humanities लेना है. I went with humanities, and City Montessori was not offering humanities at all, so I went to La Martiniere College. There I had subjects like, because in class 10th I had made my mind that okay, I'm going to be going for civil services, so better prepare for it. Why I'm going to wait? Why I'm going to waste my time in history, physics, chemistry, maths? A lot of people do that. But that's their choice, and my family has been very supportive of me. In fact, my father never wanted me to take maths in class 11th, when maths was being offered along with other subjects. So there was a choice between Hindi and maths, and my father told me, okay, you should go with Hindi because it will help you in future. No, I told him, no, I want maths because maths is relatively easier than Hindi. So, so here I was in class 11th with history. I had political science, I had economics, I had English, and then I had maths. So it was a very unique combination of subjects, and a lot of people ask me a lot about that. And the first question that I encountered in La Martiniere is that, why have you come here? A lot of people go from La Martiniere to City Montessori School. So yes, you know, once, you know, there's a very famous saying I read in The Alchemist: when the entire universe starts conspiring, you know, when you really desire something, the entire universe starts conspiring to help you achieve it. I think that's really the case with a lot of us, because we really want something today. So I think I'll go through everything, my journey, in a bit detail, and I'll take questions at the end. Okay, is that fine? So that was my introduction. So after I completed my class 12th, I think it was a stroke of luck that my father got transferred to Lucknow and I get to study in such good schools. Again, that same thing from The Alchemist: when you really desire something, the entire universe starts conspiring to help you achieve it. Because my father gets transferred every third year. And in the beginning, he used to get transferred in July. And the academic session starts from April, right? In schools. So I think by now I would have missed an entire one academic year. And I had to cover that up in January by asking this friend of mine, can you give me your book? I'll copy everything. Can you give me that copy? I'll underline everything. So that used to take a lot of time, and that was a very frustrating exercise before somebody eventually went to the High Court and asked them, please, बच्चों का transfer पहले कर दो, because it's very difficult for them. So eventually now transfers are being done early, but let's begin with everything. So this was my third attempt, and in the first attempt I couldn't clear prelims. I had very bad marks in prelims. I had, I think, 8. This was my first time, okay? I had 83 in prelims, okay? And before that, I did not have any mentor in my journey. When you gets into this journey a lot, I did not have anyone in my family in administrative services or somebody who would tell me, beta isko karo, waise karo, waise karo. So, and I also did not know which YouTube channel to search for. Though I come from a relatively, my father is in his services, he's a PCSE officer, but even then there was no discussion, communication in my family कि यार YouTube में यार ये वाला video will tell you that a topper talks like this, okay, and they will tell you that these are the sources to read. Nobody, no mentor, nothing whatsoever. So I prepared for an entire year. I graduated from St. Stephen's College in Economics Honors in 2018. Back then I was 20. So I was not eligible. So for an entire year from 2018 till 2019 prelims, I think it was on the 31st of May or the 1st of June, I don't remember. I prepared for an entire year, but I made the biggest mistake of my life because nobody told me to write 30 tests or 40 tests or 50 tests for prelims. And that was the biggest mistake that I made. And I lost an entire year. I'll come to the second mistake that I made the second attempt. So 83 I got. I think I had done around 82 questions, out of which I think around 56 or 57 were correct. And I got this very, very low score of 83. And I went, suddenly when it hits you, when you come out of the hall, you know whether you have cleared it or not. Very rarely do we predict that we have not done it, and then we do it. So I told my father, it has not gone well. He told me, no, ho jayega tumhara. And then we know what happened after 1 month. So eventually I came back to my basics. Then I watched a lot of videos. I think I wasted a lot of my time because I already had an entire year. And I saw so many videos telling, and I watched the videos of so many toppers telling you, do 60 tests, 70 tests. I think there was this guy called Kirti Basan. I think he's an IS officer. He got a very good rank. I think I read one of his interviews that he did around 60 tests. So I made it a target. He said 60 tests karne minimum. And I ended up doing around 80 to 100 tests just for prelims, and I was able to improve my score to 121. 121. This was my score, and I was able to do around 93 questions out of 100. Out of which around, I think, 70 odd were correct, and thus I was able to get 121. But because I had done around 80 to 100 tests, it was to help me in my third attempt as well. But before I come to that, I'll tell you what are my typical sources for prelims in the second attempt itself. So basically, in my second attempt, I focused on prelims, because prelims, without prelims, and I think it is the most difficult test before you come to interview, the most luck-based thing I'll say. So in the prelims, my sources were very fixed. For history, you do your traditional NCRTs. But since it was my third attempt and I had been preparing from 2018, I would not say that I read NCRTs 10 times or 15 times. I had actually made notes of it. I even had made notes of my spectrum. And I had made notes of Modern India by, I think, what is the name of the author? Bipin Chandra, right? The thin one, the NCRT one, the old NCRT one. So I had made notes of both of them because I had a lot of time at my hand. So, but eventually I focused more on my spectrum thing. I focused on the facts. You see, if you are preparing even for a mains, I think focus should be on writing facts as well. I think that worked really in my favor. I had 120 marks in my GS paper 1, just because of the fact that my answers looked a little more factual, but I'll come to that later. So for history, the typical drill that we follow, paper 1 we do for like history, we do it from NCRTs, and we do modern India from Spectrum. I think modern India you can do from 2 sources, because modern India has become such an important component that you'll at least get 4, 5, 6 questions if your luck is very good from that topic. Geography, I think geography I did primarily from NCRTs in the faint beginnings, but I have my optional as geography. So geography there really helped me. But I think once you have done your NCRTs, I think it's better to move to some advanced source for geography, because the kind of questions that have been asked over the past few years, they require a little bit more nuanced understanding of geography. So I think all of you know about PMFIS, I think. So I think I would have revised PMFIS at least 4 or 5 times at least. And that really helped me even in my mains also, and in my optional also. So that is a very good source. For polity, we all know there's only one book in this world where you can study polity, and nobody wants to do a PhD in polity, right? So Lakshmikant, I had not made notes of Lakshmikant. You just have to read it at least 2, 3 times. I'm not going to say I read it 2, 3 times. I would have read it at least 7, 8 times, but this was my 3rd attempt, okay? So you have to read it as many times as possible within the stipulated period. But there are certain very important topics in your Lakshmikant, like tribunals, and like High Court से related topic हो गया, Supreme Court से related topic हो गया. For them, for which you can make some specific notes. I find the topic on writs very confusing. What type of writ to what kind of authorities? That is a very tricky thing. So I made notes of it, and I would stick it in my room. By the end of it, by the end of the first year, when I was not doing anything, also by the end of second year when I couldn't clear anything, there were only these things were sticking in my room, and I was so angry by the end of my second attempt that I eventually got angry so much that I actually pulled out everything from my room, and it was a clean empty space like this, because I was so angry with my performance. But we'll come to that later, okay? So general science, you don't do anything about it. Just focus on your whatever popular current affairs source that you are following. For prelims, I followed my PT 365, and I think a lot of people, you know, they told me, a friend of mine who couldn't clear prelims in the second attempt when he was giving with me, he had very good marks in the very first attempt, which I failed when I scored 83. That no questions were asked from PT 365. Look, nobody is saying that questions are specifically asked from PT 365. Okay, you preparing it because that was in the current affairs. No other source. If you want to follow any other current affairs source, that's your choice. But following a current affairs book is not about कि इससे question पूछा था या नहीं पूछा था. You follow a source which is good, which you find confident, and which you find very comfortable reading. For me, it was PTSD 65, so I stick to it, and I was able to revise it at least 2, 3 times. That should be your trick. And all these topics, for example, economics. My subject in graduation was economics, so I was relatively comfortable with economics. But even then, I think I had read Sri Ram's Economy for certain factual concepts. I think there's also a book called Shankar Ganesh in the market. I haven't read it, but I know that the concepts there given are very easy. And even this year in mains, I think in paper 2, there was a question on differentiate between capital and revenue budget. And that you can do if you know your concepts well. But I did not have any specific source on economy, because over the years, if you look at the questions are very, either the questions are, if the interest rate goes, inflation, what will happen to inflation, such conceptual questions which almost everyone with even a basic understanding of economy would be able to answer. But the questions which are tough, which are become very tough, even if you have read all the sources that are available in the market, it's very difficult to answer, okay? So that becomes a serious issue with economy. For that, I think focus on 1 newspaper or 2 newspaper. In the first attempt, I did not follow any newspaper. In the second attempt, I did not follow any newspaper. I simply relied on doing as many tests as possible and completing current affairs, the compilation of current affairs like PT65 at least 2, 3 times. So that really helped. In the third attempt, for prelims, the results came on 24th September 2021, and I was expecting actually my name on the list, but you know, but when the names do not, when your name is not there on the list, I went into a quasi shock kind of thing, and I hadn't prepared for prelims at all because I was so overconfident that I would probably make it, and that was a very humbling moment of my life. and I had just, I think, 16 days. I think 24th is and October 10th was the prelims last year, and I hadn't studied anything. So for that, as I told you before, in my second attempt, since I had done around 80 to 100 tests, that came to my rescue in my third attempt. I'll tell you how. In the second attempt, by the time I had around 16 days to prepare. What can you do in 16 days? Prelims, once you are out of touch with prelims, it's very difficult to get back in touch. So by the time I did around 4 or 5 tests for prelims in the third attempt, I came into the zone of prelims. And this was because I had already prepared myself by doing around 80 to 100 tests. So what I'm trying to emphasize is that even if you have very less time for prelims, you will do wonders if only you are doing test. And test करने का ये मतलब नहीं कि test कर लिया और छोड़ दिया, हो गया. If you're getting 85, you're sad. If you're getting 130, you're sad. Even if I were getting 85, I would read the solutions of all the questions. All the questions. Whether I've done them correctly or whether I've done them incorrectly. Because those you have done them correctly, there might be something in the solution that might help you in elimination, something like that. Where those that you've done wrongly, you'll have to know. In fact, during the second attempt, during the third attempt, I did not have enough time to read the solution. So one day I told my father, I will only do those questions. Even I won't read the solution because I have such less time. I want to do as many tests as possible so that more and more iterations happen. And I'm able to repeat that in my exam. But he told them, at least you should know what you did not know. So at least read the solutions. Don't read what is a detailed explanation. Read only what is the answer of that question. What will you mark in that answer? So that really helped me. Eventually, by the time within those 16 days, I had done around 30 tests. And if you have done 80 to 100 tests before that year and you do 30 tests, you come into the zone of clearing prelims. So prelims is not about having vast knowledge. You all know, you have seen the prelims paper. It has become very unpredictable. Not more than 30, 40 questions people know. And the remaining you do by here and there, trick and tips, whatever trick that you apply. So for me, it was a very tricky attempt because I had just prepared it for 16 days and it was becoming very difficult for me and I was really scared. But by the time I did that 30th test, which I did on 9th of October, I was scoring around 100, 105, 110. Sometimes I even went to 115. So I was getting a little confident that probably I might make it. And eventually I ended up scoring around 119.57, some random number here. But it was 119. CSAT I did not have a problem. In the first attempt I had scored around 68 marks in CSAT. So I knew that CSAT is becoming a trickier thing. And I'm very good with maths. I'm not bad with maths. But CSAT paper is not that, okay, 66 or 67 is a qualifying thing that you will leave it or take it for granted. In the next attempt, since I had a lot of time, there are so many videos of SSC CGL preparation available online. And you search all the topics that you study in your CSAT paper, whether it is number system or whether it is, let's say, seating arrangement, or whether it is, let's say, ये वाला नहीं होता A, E. These are all available and they will actually tell you tricks that divide it into 3 parts. And the best thing about those videos is that they will give you the question and they will solve it also. Also there's a person who is very excited. I think every time he keeps on saying Jai Mahakal, something like that. Huh? I find his videos very good. Because his tricks are very good. And in the second attempt, you see, I was able to score my marks from 68, I was able to go to 110. Just because of his videos. You see, I like that guy very much. He is very interesting. And he doesn't make the class boring, and that's the best thing about him. He'll give you tricks and he will give you such tricks that if you practice them at least 5-6 times, you'll get very good marks. So I used to watch all those videos. I think I would have watched every video of his because his videos were so good. Okay, that thing is his teaching style. I won't comment on that. That's a very good style. If you are able to help me increase my marks from 68 to 110, I think I owe him, a great part of my success. So eventually, when I had around for 16 days, what can you do with your CSAT? So I realized that okay, कुछ तो याद होगा ही पिछले बार का. So I did around 3 tests of vision, I think, and I was getting around 110 sometimes, 105 sometimes. So this was my score. So but eventually in the real exam I had 92. So I think it's not great, but it's doable. So what I would suggest you watch his videos or search any topic online on the YouTube, and you will find that for every topic there are around 50 videos available. And the best thing about these videos as compared to those books which are available in the market is that for those books you will have to see the question and then they will solve it in a very difficult manner. But for those videos which they do it for, I think there are channels like Adda 247, or what are the other channels? Study IQ. There are so many teachers who will write the question and they will solve it also. So you'll know by the I think for difficult topics like seating arrangement, I would have watched at least 5-10 videos. And one very survival type of mistake that a lot of people when they go for CSAT do is that they will think that okay, we will do only questions around 40-50 questions, whatever that we can do out of 80, and we'll try to just get past this magical figure of 67. And this is the worst mistake. Because the moment you start getting at least 2 or 3 questions of your wrong, you are entering into a dangerous territory, because here the negative is more. If you get a question wrong, you get more negatives. So this 40-50, and so in the next attempt, in the first attempt I would have done around I think 37 to 40 questions out of 80, and I was getting a score of 68. From the next it became as if I am doing it for like you attempt your GS paper 1 prelims. That same strategy I applied, that I will try to do as many questions as possible for CSAT. And in the 2 attempts after that, I did 62 questions out of 80. And the next attempt, that happened on October 10th, I did around 65 questions out of 80. This ensures that you are at least doing enough, because again, if you do a question right, you will get so many marks, 2.5. If you get a question wrong, they will be negative, but eventually you will come to the conclusion that doing questions on the higher side is always better than doing questions on the lower side. And I think this really worked in my favor in GS paper 1. This year, I did around 97 questions out of 100 in prelims. Okay, this looks like a very high score, but I'll tell you, my paper actually ended 15 minutes before the time. And in those 15 minutes, I was thinking, यार 3 क्वेश्चन कर ही लेता हूँ. मैंने यही सोचा, पर then I came to realize बहुत लालच भी बुरी बला है. But eventually, for this figure of 97, why did I do 97 questions? Or in the second attempt itself, I did around 93 questions. Why did I do around 93 questions? This high range of figures, I came to my conclusion that this was my strength. As I doing more and more tests, I came to realize that this was my strength. I'm not good with a figure like 75, 85, 87. This was not working in my favor. By doing around 97 questions or 93 questions, I was getting marks in the range of 110. And this 97 I did only after 16 days of preparation. And this only happened because I was doing so many tests. So the entire conclusion that I want to present to you right now is that you all know about the traditional sources. There is not a single different source that I read. I did not read newspaper for 9 months. Last year, I think when I picked up newspaper on 11th of October last year, on 12th of October, October 10th was the prelims. October 11, I took a break, I went to CP. Because I had already cried my share of crying, and I was feeling so angry. But then a lot of people, I think I went to have some pizza or something, and eventually I came to my house, and then next day I told my mother, "Kal se newspaper lagwa do." That newspaper wala was a very angry man. He started it from I think 2-3 days later. So I think I started reading newspaper from 14th of October, and before that I hadn't picked up newspaper for 1.5 years. And this happened because I believe that newspaper are of no use for prelims. I still believe that newspaper are of no use for prelims though, because I did not read newspaper till October 14th and my prelims was on October 10th, but still I could get 119 marks. Prelims के लिए, that's my personal view. If you want to read newspaper, that's well and fine. यार ये तो personal opinion है. But for me, I think prelims के लिए newspaper is not a must thing, but for mains it is very important, and I'll come to that right now. In 16 days, I did not read a single newspaper. I simply relied on test series. So the entire conclusion comes to this: if you want to clear your prelims, do as many tests as possible, and then you will come to realize that there is a sweet range in which you have to do the number of questions. I would have done 100 questions this time, to be very honest. I wanted to experiment, but then I thought, हो गया भाई. After that, for CSAT again, do as many questions as possible. There's no need to stick to this very bad idea कि we'll do enough to clear 67 mark. That's a very bad idea, I think. You should do enough so that you're getting comfortable marks. So you're not sitting on the center hooks कि यार मेरा हो रहा है नहीं हो रहा. Because the moment 2-3 questions of yours starts going haywire, you are in a frenzy. And a lot of people with this survival tactic, they do a lot of questions of comprehension, and comprehension have become, very tricky. I think I did a lot of comprehension questions this time, but even I'm not sure how many of them were correct. But I did a lot of maths questions, and in the last 5 minutes, I was able to get 4 or 5 maths questions correct. And I think otherwise my score would have been very bad. It would have been around 75, 76 also. So do as many questions as possible. Attempt as many questions as possible in CSAT. No survival tactic. Sources तो मैंने बता ही दिए कि YouTube videos were my primary sources, and doing as many tests as possible. So now let's come to the mains preparation, okay? Mains ka, let's come to the essay thing. Now essays have become very unpredictable. This year, so many philosophical essays were coming कि meme ही ज़्यादा बन गए थे, आंसर कम लिखे गए उस पे, ठीक है? A lot of people making memes on that, okay? And you begin to question where is UPSC heading. But then I think we should not go with the pre-assumption कि यार इस तरह का question पूछा ही जाएगा, factual question पूछा ही जाएगा. Go with an open mind. Look, essay give a lot of leeway to people to explore what they know. There is not a specific question. And if you consider essay to be very specific question, you won't be able to write 100 to 1000 to 220, 1200 words. So essays ka, my preparation was that whatever I have read in GS papers, I will use it for essays. Whether it is paper 1, or whether it is paper 2, or whether it is paper 3, whether it is paper 4. You have to use it for essays in one way or the other. The other different thing I think that I did, and it's not so different anymore. Anyway, I think I've seen a lot of toppers doing that, and I used to watch those videos and came to the conclusion that you can make a copy of quotes. But eventually, my optionals, I have a topic in my geography optional, geographical thought. How many of you have geography? So only those people know now. So there is a topic called geographical thought, in which we study about geographical philosophers. Even they say something which become quote. So I use those quotes even in one of my essays. My score is not that excellent, but given I had 131 last year and I had 128 this year. So I don't know where they cut my marks, but you never know. Do you? You only know how much marks you're getting. And even you see, in geography, in paper 1, I have 156. And in paper 2, I have 150. So my total comes down to be 306. Still, I don't know how did I get 156 or 150. But I did my papers well. I had revised them many times and I gave many tests. But even then, you can't predict how much marks you're getting. If you've written very, very good, and in ethics paper, they've given me 99. I don't know. My paper was not that great, but it was not that bad. I would end up with 99, okay? So with UPSC, you'll have to understand that there is certain level of unpredictability. The same common idiom of U in UPSC stands for unpredictability goes. but uh, but uh, so in essay, I had made a copy of notes, and I gave, in the first attempt, I did not. I wrote one single essay, and I ended up getting around 85. I think I had written it here only, vision only, and they gave me very bad marks. And I'd actually thought I'd written it very good. Okay, so that is. But eventually, you know, I was so scared of writing another essay again that I eventually ended up writing that 131 essay. So, and I used a lot of my quotes, anecdotes, stories, everything that you feel comfortable with. I never thought that writing an essay with a very bang kind of an opening would help. I think writing an essay should be, you should take inspiration from those essays or from those articles which are published in the newspapers, right? How they begin, how they talk about, what kind of connectivity is there between the first paragraph and the second paragraph. I've always, look, and I can't say that there is a universal way of writing essays. Essays, everyone has its own style. So if I say that my style is this one, this particular style is mine, and if I were to say that if you're going to use that style, you'll end up getting very good essays, I think that will not work. It may even work for only 1 to 2% of the people. It won't work for a lot of people. So what I would suggest is that you should focus, you should write at least, I had written around, I think 6 tests on essays. I took 2 test series. I took one at Vision, and I took one at Vikas Ranjan's Triumph IS. And I tried to apply it both because Vikas Ranjan would give me some insights that you should. I think his guidance was very technical, but I was not able to implement it 100%. But he did say something that use block letters to make your answers, or to make the main point of your essay, something like that. So I was trying to implement it, but at the end of the day, when I had written around 10, 12 essays, I had come to the conclusion that I have a specific way of writing essays, which was answering question in mind and answering them on the essay. So for example, there was this essay this time, there are better practices than best practices. If you've seen that question paper, there are, I think there are better practices to best practices, and best practices was in quotes. I don't know why. But I wrote this essay very simply. What is best practice? First of all, I defined. Then I defined what is better practice. And this is just one example of how I wrote essays. This is not applicable to everyone, but I think I should share at least one example of my story. So I wrote, first thing was what is a better practice? No, I started, I think at that point of time there was a G7 meeting happened, and there was something called Cornwall consensus. You must have read about it. And Cornwall consensus was considered to be antithesis of Washington consensus, because Washington consensus talked about free market, neoliberal policies. But Cornwall consensus, given it came in the background of COVID-19, where the role of state had become very important, it talked about the fact that state cannot be separated from the health services, or that privatization cannot be solution for everything. Basically, the idea was that. So first of all, I talked about how Cornwall consensus seems to be a better practice than a so-called best practice of Washington consensus. That was my introduction. And then I wrote, are there better practices to every best practices? No. Love, honesty, integrity, these are best practices, but there can never be a better practice than these practices. So you talked about this. Then I think of, can there be circumstances when better practices can be better than the situations in political field, better practices to best practices? For example, so before you answer this, describe that I wrote that best practices are defined with respect to time. For example, sati was a best practice given its time. Okay, in the people in the 17th century, 16th century, they thought that sati is the best practice. But eventually, as education came, people came to realize that there is something called women empowerment also, freedom of women also, their right to exist even without their husband. They realized that there are better ways of living there are better types of living. So they decided to discard sati for a better form of living, right? Similarly, I thought that writing mains answer without test series would be a best thing. But I realized that there can be a better practice to writing your best answers, because if you write those test series, you are going to write a better answer. So in the political field, now a lot of countries consider that colonialism is the best practice. Now eventually, as time passed on, people realized that democracy is a better practice. So after I gave these examples, and then I wrote why certain practices are not necessarily the best practices. So see, I'm invoking a conversation in my essays. I'm talking about the fact that there can be so many dimensions of this one particular essay, and even then you will be able to write. So even I had trouble finishing the essay because I was able to generate so many points. And then, you know, at the end you make all those in that one page, you make all those notes. So I had utilized all those 2 pages because I was getting 2 points, because I was trying to generate a conversation. You should think of generating a conversation in your essays. But beyond that, I think with 128 marks, I can't say that I am the best person to guide people in the field of essay, because I don't have very good marks. Okay, last year 131, I think it was a very good score. I don't know what is 128 this year. I'm hoping it's a good thing. It worked wonders for me. Apart from that, make sure that certain thematic elements are also part of your essay. Thematic elements mean you're talking in terms of political space, talking in terms of economic space, talking in terms of cultural space. So this can also be part of your essay. But more or less, my essay was divided into 4 or 5 parts, and in every part I tried to incorporate thematical element and also try to incorporate the what is that term, chronological element, which means when you begin an essay, you talk about the chronology of the issue that is being taught about. So your essay both includes time element and the space element. So that will give you more space to write, more ideas to think in terms of. For example, I think the mistake that I made this year was in choosing another thing that should come to your mind is that which essay are you choosing? Again, that is a very personal question, but if I were to analyze my marks in essay paper, I think the biggest mistake that I made this year was in choosing the right essay. I chose the essay which was a little, I thought, easier, but ended up becoming a very difficult, I come to know now. It was the first essay. Technology has become the a place for, what was the essay? The process of self-discovery has now been technologically outsourced. And I think I did not write this very well. So again, choose your essays, and again, before choosing your essay, at least try to make this for your essays, so that you have a complete framework. And again, a lot of people I've seen, when they write their essays, the first paragraph and the second paragraph have no connection whatsoever. So at least try to make that connection. And when you're reading your newspapers every day, make sure that you analyze also how they're writing, not only what they're writing. Now, what they're writing is of primary importance. Since you are studying for UPSC, what they're writing becomes extremely important for you. But at the same time, analyze what they're writing. How are they starting their essays? How are they starting their newspaper articles? Are they starting it with a big bang entry, or they are starting it a very low key kind of a thing? So if you analyze them, not a lot of these articles, they are written for purposes for, you know, starting with a big bang beginning, and thus I came to the conclusion that you have to start your essays very normally. Don't take a lot of stress on starting your essays. The biggest problem I've seen people who write a lot of essays is that they don't know where to start their essays from. And they will say, we are demotivated throughout the essay writing because we have not found a good introduction. Isn't that the problem? A lot of people must be facing. You write your entire essays with a very demotivated mindset because you don't have a very good beginning, right? So for that, I think there is no need for, you know, exceptionally good beginning. Write your essays, invite the person who is reading your essays into it, and the moment, and if you can keep him interested in your essays, he will give you very good marks. That's the conclusion that I've come to. Your essays should not be only about, you know, frittering out throughout the, you know, giving a very good introduction and then you don't write in the middle. It won't work like that. And I think this is a popular misconception that if you, if you have a very excellent beginning to your essay, you will get very good marks. Invite your examiner into your essays. He should read it fully. And why will he read it? Because he finds it interesting. And how will he find it interesting? Because you have to write it interesting, not only because the introduction is good, but also because the following part is also very good. And about the ways to write essay, I've already told you that everyone has its own way of writing an essay. A lot of people find writing the entire essay in a thematical framework, like they will start from the very beginning, political, social, economic, cultural. The one thing that you can add is the chronological element. So if an essay is about, let's say, the process of self-discovery, wrote about the chronological element, ki 1900s, what was the source of discovery, books. In the 20th century, what was the source of discovery, what was the role of self-discovery, books plus some other material. And in the 21st century, with the rise of internet, with the rise of, I think, Web 3.0, the process of self-discovery has become very much decentralized, and people are using internet, technology, and then you can bring in your political, social, economic, cultural element. Political, for example, in the technological point of view, I talked about the fact that every day, one country is developing one type of weapons, and in process of self-discovery, another country is developing the system that can actually effectively block that missile system, for example, ballistic missile defense system of India. So that is one aspect of self-discovery that India is doing. So there can be multiple ways of writing an essay, but I think I would leave you with this one conclusion, that essay gives you freedom to explore yourself. And now this looks like a very moral science kind of a thing. But again, you have to write your essays, and then you will come to the conclusion that, okay, this is my essay and how I'm getting good at it, and this is my personal style. And I'll tell you my story. When I started writing my essays, I think by the time I had written around 7-8 essays, then I went to the internet and searched how to write better essays. I was getting decent enough marks. I was getting 120, 122, 130 kind of marks in my essays. And then I searched, and then I came to realize this person who was scoring 155 marks in the essay paper. He was talking about the exact thing. I can't recall his name, but when I read his strategy, eventually I came to realize that his style of writing essay was very similar to mine. No, in fact, my style was very similar to his. That I should say that. Okay, I am not stealing his credit. Okay. And then I realized, no, I am made for writing this kind of essay. I think a senior from my college, I think his name is, I think he scored rank 50 or 51. I think he got 161 marks in essay. Vikram Grewal, you must have heard about him. So he was my history senior. I think he graduated in 2017. I graduated in 2018. He used to write excellent essays. And when I saw his essays, I know that he was going to get very good marks. But when I looked at his essays, I realized that his style is not something that I can copy. He writes very unique essays. And that's why he ended up getting 161 marks. So I'm not going to apply to my essays what I think is the strength of the other person. Stick to your strengths. A lot of people find it easy to write thematical essays. A lot of people find it easy to write chronological essays. Nothing wrong with that. So after you've written 8 or 10 essays, you'll come to a conclusion that this is my style. And then you stick to it. And again, if an examiner tells you that, okay, certain things needs to be improved, you have to incorporate that in your essays. Third thing that I want to talk about in terms of essays is that every paragraph of yours, not only it should it should talk about a new point, which is I think very, very common knowledge today. It should also include an example also. Make your answers very, full of examples. I think I had written around 20 paragraphs or 25 paragraphs. I would have given at least 20-25 examples. That vague paragraph of yours becomes very factual with an example. For example, in terms of there are better practices to best practices. In political scenario, I talked about the fact that at one point of time, dictatorship was considered a very best practice because it brings a lot of, guidance or punctuality. For example, trains started running in time during Mussolini's Italy. But then people came to realize that this is a very bad form of government. So they wanted to express their voice. There should be freedom of speech and expression. There should be everything. Okay, things might work a little slow, but they work for everyone. Everyone can say anything without the fear of being persecuted, right? So we brought in democracy. So democracy is a better practice to a best practice of so-called dictatorship. In this, I gave an example of Kazakhstan's protest. One day happening around January, Kazakhstan was boiling at that point of time because of some rules or regulations. So I told them that, I wrote an example that in Kazakhstan, this entire debate is being questioned. That dictatorship is being opposed by people who are fighting it against the despotic rulers of Kazakhstan. Give an example of that. So by reading newspaper, you will come to realize that within 3 months, you get so many examples that you can write all your questions. Paper 1, 2, 3, 4, all papers. It becomes very easy. Again, let's come to the essay part. We've done essay, you know. Let's come to the mains. Now GS paper 1, my sources were very much similar to yours. Geography, I can say that my optional was geography, so I did not do any specific preparation, but I would suggest that for geography, go to a little advanced source. I say don't stick to only NCRTs. That's my personal opinion. I'm not going to say that NCRTs sufficiently gives you everything. Go to, I think PMF IAS is a very good source, not because I'm being paid by PMF IAS to say that, but because my personal experience tells me that if you read PMF IAS, you can write answer to the level of your optional. Not that optional is a must. Writing answers for an optional is a must, but I would say that slightly advanced to a slightly more advanced source. If you've looked at this year's GS paper, there were so many questions from geography, and a lot of people found it very difficult to answer those questions. So I'm not saying just because इस साल आ गया तो हर साल ही आएगा, but again focus on PMF IAS. That was my key source for, again my optional was geography, but again PMF helped me in my optional geography and in my GS geography. For history, I followed art and culture. We all know there's only one book in the world. There's nothing. For example, for geography, I followed PMF plus NCRTs, plus I had my optional notes. But since I have my optional note, does not mean that I ignored PMF. I still followed PMF completely. For history, in mains, you know that questions are asked from art and culture only, or either art and culture or modern India. Those two are the most important topics. And in last year, in my second attempt, I got 97 marks in my paper, GS paper 1. And this year I have 120 marks. I messed up 2 questions from art and culture part only. So I realized that art and culture has become very important. So for art and culture, we all know there's only one book, Nitin Singhania, and class 11th NCRT, yes, class 11th NCRT you already know. Apart from that, I think I did a few topics from CCRT, but again that is up to you. If you're not able to, if you're not satisfied with what you're given in here, you can go to CCRT. I found that topics on dances and traditional dance or other forms of dances were much better given in CCRT, so I those few topics from there. And again, it was a very splintered. You see, it was my third attempt. I was bound to jump from here to there, okay. So I'm not going to be straightforward and said only these 2 sources helped me to to get 120 marks. I jumped to CCRT because I thought that okay, I've gotten bored of reading Nitin Singhania and I'm not getting anything new from it, so I jumped to that. And this is the result because this was my third attempt. Okay. So for those who are giving it for the first time, I think these 2 sources are more than sufficient. For other topics like society, I think there is society in paper 1, right? So for society, I think I did not do much. Just I think I found some notes somewhere, but those were not good. Neither did I read my NCRT. So basically it was about newspaper. Focused on mainly on newspapers only. Anyway, writing answers on society is very it depicts your strength. If you're able to write answers in society, not a lot of people can write good answers on society because it's such a general thing. So if you develop this capacity of writing good answers in society, you will get very good marks. Also, the kind of questions that are being asked, for example, the impact of cryptocurrency on the society, on the Indian society, or the impact of cryptocurrency. What was that question? What is cryptocurrency? That's a very easy question. How does it affect global society? Has it been affecting Indian society? Now, these are the kind of questions you can't predict, isn't it? This is something you'll have to head then there in the examination hall itself. And the only way you can answer is that if you are reading those newspapers and you connect it with the debates on cryptocurrency, because I remember from October till December, the debate on cryptocurrency was waging very badly. Because RBI was talking about launching digital rupee. I don't know if it has launched it yet, but all the newspapers, they covered it in great detail. So if you're following, if you're becoming part of that debate, you can include something of that. And I'll tell you why I was connected so deeply with that debate, because of newspapers. And I'll come to how I read newspapers in a bit. After society, what is that fourth topic that is part of your syllabus? Now, world history. You see, world history, I can tell you, I was a bit lucky here. Not because the questions were not asked, but I completed my class 12th from Le Martinet College, and I completed it from ISC. Not a lot of people do from ISC. So in class 12th, our recommended book was Mastering World History by Norman Loaf. You understand that? So I had already read there, but I think the best book in the market so far for world history is Mastering World History by Norman Loaf. I think this is the best book you can study for world history, but again it's a little tough. But I think not many questions are asked from there. But at the end of the day, I read this book. I did not read anything else. Apart from that, I think Mrinal also has some slides on world history. And I think those slides can come a bit handy, especially for topics like German reintegration or Italy's unification, American War of Independence, the French War of Independence. And I would suggest you study history by these topics only. Read only on important topics. You don't have to read everything in continuity from the beginning of middle of the 18th century till the end of world wars. Only choose and pick and choose topics to study. One day pick up World War I and study it. Pick up World War II, study it. Only important topics, because syllabus is so huge you can't cover it, and that's how I did it. I chose important topics like American War of Independence, American Civil War, Italy's unification, Germany's unification. After that, I studied, I think, World War I, World War II, Cold War, and I think I also read about America in the roaring 20s of America, when America became a very rich country, and then the collapse of 1929. So these topics, only choose important topics which are there in the syllabus and read it. I think apart from that, are there any other topics left in paper 1? Post-independence, we all know about it. Post-independence, I read from that NCRT that is available, right? Very NCRT book, I think class 11th or class 12th. What is the name of the book? Yes, India After Independence. That's the only book that I read. And anyway, I think that kind of a history is very easy. You will be able to write good answers. Just bring in a lot of facts. Apart from that, in all the questions, I gave at least 2 to 3 examples. If you're not writing examples, you are not getting good marks. The only way I could improve my marks from 97 to 120, I think this is one of the highest marks this year, is only because of the fact that in every question I would have gotten at least one more mark. You see, every question has around, there are 20 questions, right? So if in every question, if I'm getting 1 mark more, I'm reaching 117. But okay, that's one thing, that's a different thing. But in every question I gave examples, at least 2 examples, 3 examples. If you're writing examples, and how are you getting examples? You're getting examples by reading your newspapers thoroughly. There is no other thing in the world that you are reading. apart from examples, apart from newspapers, that is adding external value, because the books that you're reading, you've read it elsewhere. You have read it 1,000 times. The only new thing that you are reading every day is your newspapers, and you can use those newspapers to add numerous examples. Apart from that, I think we'll come to paper 2. Now paper 2 also I have 119, and I improved it from 97. And this happened because of 2-3 things. First of all, you have to focus on your key sources more and more. Again, I read only Lakshmikant for polity. There are only 3 months between your prelims and your mains. It's very difficult for you to follow any other source. And if you are following any other source, you have to begin from the very beginning, which is a very difficult thing, I know. I don't like to start from the beginning. Anyway, you have read Lakshmikant. If you have read Lakshmikant enough, you will be able to answer your questions very well. I'll give you example. I think there was a question on legislative councils this year, right? Under what provisions are legislative councils created? So if you have written Article 169, you will get very good marks. And why will you write Article 169? Because you're integrating your prelims performance in your mains answer writing, right? In prelims, you focus more on the Article 169 part, and in the mains, you create your own answers, obviously. And use examples again. Examples. I will tell you, if you remember, during the time of your October, November, December, there were raids happening on somebody called Pushpak Jain or Pushp Jain in Kanpur. Those raids happened, no, that became a very big controversy. And that man was a member of MLC, right? So give an example about the negative aspects of member of Legislative Council, that such people are becoming part of MLC, isn't it? Now that is a very good answer. In the question on parliamentary committee, I think Shashi Tharoor was saying that you take away all important issues from my committee and you give it to JPC or something like that. So I gave that example. The US is also, the third source was Cut the Clutter by Shekhar Gupta. How many of you see it? Huh? Not a lot of you see it. Okay, I could get at least 2-3 questions directly. I'm not saying that this is the best source. It's just that when I was eating something or when I wanted to relax, this is a very good source, especially for topics related to economy, because he has a very center-rightish view of economy that will help you generate answer. For example, this question, the US is facing an existential threat in the form of China that is much more challenging than the Soviet Union. Explain. He has discussed this entire issue in a 20 minutes or 30 minutes cut the clutter, and I was able to answer this question very well. So I think in paper 2, because he discussed mainly political issues, and political issues usually arise from the constitution itself or somewhere there is a linkage between them. Apart from that, I think in paper 2, the welfare schemes thing I did from vision sources. I think mains 365, that's more than sufficient for you to complete that. Role of civil services, again, for certain topics, for international relations, I did only from newspapers. I did not read it anywhere. And this has to be complemented with mains 365 that I did. Obviously, you can read any other thing. For paper 1 also, and for paper 2 also, paper 3, paper 4, I read only mains 365, and I wrote the compilation at least 4 or 5 times. Again, that is a very, very difficult, but if you have read only important topics, you will be able to revise it. You don't need to focus on every single topic. Every single thing is not important in mains 365. Okay, you have to read only important topics, and after reading so much for 3 months continuously, you will come to a conclusion that certain topics are very important. I realized that interstate disputes is a very important topic, and that exact question came in my optional paper too. I realized that question on interlinking of river is very important. Everywhere it is important. Every year it is important. And one single 15 marker came in my optional paper too. And I revised them at least 5-6 times. If I'm revising mains 365 2 times, it means I'm revising important thing at least 3-4 times. And that should be okay. You don't have to read the it entirely. So every time when I say I'm reading, I'm telling you the sources of GS paper 2, GS paper 3, it is automatically assumed that I would have read mains 365 somewhere along the journey. I will always read it. And other, like certain topics like bilateral regional, global groupings. These are random topics जो मैंने छोड़ दिए थे, or I leave it to the luck, or you read it somewhere along the mains 365. You don't have to focus on these topics, but focus on the polity part, because polity part is in your hand. You can only control the controllables. You cannot control all the variables, right? And mains, Lakshmikant, you've read at least 5-10 times, or 3-4 times. You know what to write in your polity. You don't know what to write in international relations, because international relations can only be done from current affairs. So leave international relations aside. I think apart from that, democratic process, NGO, the typical drill, make notes of these topics. I had made one copy in which I wrote about pressure groups, NGOs. Again, I used, only few topics, I used ARC reports. Now, ARC reports doesn't mean I read the recommendation of these reports or something like that. I did not read that. I only focused on the topics. Like if you see that there is a topic on self-help group, right, in the ARC reports, in which they talk about, I think, Kudumshri. Only for those topics. You don't have to read it completely. So these were a few of my sources. Apart from that, the first part can be done from Lakshmikant. For these part, you can make notes. For international relations, you leave it to the luck. I left it for luck and focused more on current newspapers. If Prime Minister is going somewhere, it becomes important. If G7 is happening, it becomes important. And if you look at the questions last year, I think an SCO summit happened, and SCO becomes an important part. So the question was on SCO and AUKUS. And if you look at the question paper, non-important things are not asked. Things which are in the sidelines are not asked. Only most important things are asked. Everyone here knows about AUKUS, right? Everyone knows about AUKUS. So is it something which is new? It's not new. So you have to focus only on important things. Non-important things are not asked in the question paper. You all know about SEO. Is there anyone who doesn't know about SEO? Nobody. Everyone knows about SEO very well. So focus only on important topics, and this is something that you will understand by analyzing past year question papers, that only important topics from international relations are asked. Question किसी एरी गैरी रीजनल ग्रुपिंग के ऊपर नहीं पूछा गया था. It was only asked on a very important regional grouping, which is SEO. Again, I think even the question on parliamentary standing committees, give example of the parliamentary standing committees which is in news. Every day there are questions being asked कि parliamentary committees are becoming non-relevant. Their power is being taken away from them, and Shashi Tharoor keeps crying about them. So if you're reading these newspapers, you will get to know about this. And this question was directly from current affairs as far as I know. Now paper 3, we all know UPSC is not giving marks in paper 3. Even I have very less marks. I think I have 91 in paper 3. I don't have very high marks in paper 3. Last year I had 82, so I was able to improve by at least 9 marks. And again, paper 3 syllabus tells you have to make notes. Look, paper 3 sources, GS paper 3, make notes of all the topics. I had made notes of all the topics, whether it is internal security, whether it is environment, whether it is government budgeting, whether it is major crops or agriculture, issues related to direct and indirect farm subsidy, food processing industry. I have made notes of all of these topics. The typical thing which I saw when people, when people used to come here and they talk about that. Similar thing that everyone does. I did not do anything extra here. I made notes of it. Also infrastructure, I had notes. Land reforms also, I had notes. I found some notes online which were very useful. I think I used some rankers notes. Not rankers IS Academy, some UPSC ranker. Somebody who scored very good marks in UPSC, they had left some notes. But again, I think land reforms, if you search on the internet, you will find very good things. I'm not recommending any specific source, but there was a question. So I gave examples of Bargardari, Operation Bargardari and everything, which will come handy somewhere or the other. So no, and disaster, see, other topics like conservation, environmental pollution, disaster management, these are covered in my optional. There are no specific sources for this. For disaster management, I had made notes, specific notes on all the disasters. What are some disasters like earthquake? But again, be prepared with current examples. There was a question asked on my landslides this year, right? You should be aware of the current events that are happening in terms of that. You should know what are the landslides that are happening. This is the way that you connect or integrate your current affairs with your papers. By writing just vague points is not going to fetch marks. You'll have to give examples. You'll have to show the examiner that, okay, I know these things, but I'm also able to connect it to the current affairs. And land reforms, effect of liberalization, this is something which is current economy. Economy, I never prepared any notes. Economy, I only read from current affairs. And when I'll come to the current affairs, I'll tell you that while reading newspapers, I used to read two newspapers, Indian Express and Mint. Again, why I read Mint? I followed, I think, Vaishali Singh's strategy. I think she was telling that she used to read Mint. So I'll come to that conclusion. And since if you're reading Mint, Mint is a completely economy-oriented newspaper. You'll know everything that is happening in terms of economy through this newspaper of Mint. So Mint, again, I'll come to that. I'll come to that. Now, internal role of external state and non-state actors. The entire internal security thing, I had made notes of each and every topic. I made notes from, I think, Vajiram's yellow book, and then I complemented it with, I think there's also Ashok Kumar's book, right? What is that name of the book? I think An Introduction to Internal Security, something like that. But again, I complemented it from Mains 365. That is the way that you read it. You have to connect everything to current affairs. If you're not able to connect it to the current affairs, you will find it difficult to get marks. And UPSC is not giving marks in paper 3. There are few people, again, I'm not saying a few. There are few people who are getting good marks. They are crossing hundreds, even crossing 100 has become difficult in paper 3. Okay. I think if somebody were to ask me before the results were declared, which amongst the all GS papers you have done the best, I would have told them GS paper 3. It was the best paper of mine. I wrote everything, every question, barring 1-2 questions which I did not know well. I wrote everything. Everything was factual. But even then I have not scored well. And I felt that my paper 1 went very bad. And they gave me 120. So paper 3 to score, I think you need more and more examples, you need more and more case studies, and everything covered under the sun is part of your paper 3, whether economy. Okay, so economy, you do it from Mains 365. Again, everything, the current affairs thing, you have to do it from Mains 365. I did not make any specific notes because 3 months is a very less time. And you not only have to read it, you have to at least revise it 2-3 times, right? We're not all Einsteins ki bhai पढ़ लिया एक बार और चले गए और then we'll ace the paper. I had to read it at least 2-3 times, and this is not possible if you are simply focused on reading it once. Okay, we'll read some new source. Keep your sources limited. And for me to keep economy sources limited, I just focused on Mains 365 economy. Only on that, and you'll get direct questions from that. Again, issues related to farm, I've already told you, I made notes, and the second source for this, the second source would be Mains 365. Again, you can follow any other popular current affairs compilation, but for me, make notes and Mains 365, and I've already told you that for internal security, I've made notes from Vajiram's yellow book. And then you complement everything with your Mains 365. I'm emphasizing again and again that your answer should reflect current orientation. It should have enough examples. It should reflect a thought process where you have tried to incorporate your basics with what is happening around you. It should not only be about write an essay on something, then you're writing about it, what happened 2000 years back. Nobody interested in that. They want to know what you know and how are you able to connect it to what is happening right now. If I can give example, in paper 3, I think there was a question. Discuss the various causes and effects of landslides. So give examples of landslides that have happened in that year. Again, discuss the major outcomes of 26th session of Conference of Parties. Everyone should know each and every point because this thing was so much in news. Every point should be known. You see, this is not a very difficult question. It was in news. Everyone knows about it. So somebody who has prepared these points well by reading, and again, you don't have to make notes. I'd never made notes of current affairs. You just have to revise it again, and don't think about it that, okay, I've revised in one, I've forgotten it. Come to it again, highlight it, and then you'll do better. Again, nobody knew the question on Nobel Prize in Physics. I think even I didn't know it, so I wrote it very vaguely. I think apart from that, you see, not a single question is there in GS paper 3 that I can say come from a specific source. Your best friend in paper 3 is you have to make notes of all the topics for which you cannot make notes like economy. You have to go hard on mains 365. You'll have to revise all those topics very well. And in fact, some questions can only be answered if you have done it very well. I'll give you a very good example. If you remember, there was a question, I think, explain the purposes of Green Grids Initiative. And there was this another part, when was this idea first floated in International Solar Alliance? So if you have done your mains 365 well, you will even know the second part of this answer. Because sometimes I realize that sometimes the questions are only asked from mains 365. This is my personal view. That somebody who was creating questions for paper 3, he simply picked questions after looking at mains 365. This is my personal view. Sometimes even a question that was asked on CBI, कि CBI की orientation क्या है और CBI का क्या है वो. I think this was the question. The jurisdiction of Central Board of Investigation regarding lodging an FIR and conducting probe within a particular state is being questioned by various states, right? This was a question, 15 marker in your paper 2. The moment I saw this question, I realized, ये तो सीधे pick up कर लिया इन्होंने main 65 से. Because exactly the way the question is being framed is the way the question was asked. The way the question is being framed, the same way your answer is given in your mains 365. So again, I cannot emphasize enough. You have to read your mains 365, and if you have read them well, 4-5 क्वेश्चन तो ऐसे ही निकल जाएंगे इतने अच्छे, you won't even realize. I wrote everything in this question on CBI, not from my Lakshmikant, but from my current affairs. You have to understand the fact that mains 365 will play a very important. I'm बार मैं mains 365 कह रहा हूँ, but does not mean that any other current affairs manual is bad. But I stick to it and it worked in my favor. Again, paper 1, 2, 3, I'm saying for the emptieth time, examples. Now, why examples? Because a lot of points that we are writing are vague. We don't know, we know very little. But by writing examples, you are making that vague point a little factual, right? And try to make your answers look factual, because if they look very factual, you will get very good marks. Again, for paper 4, I did not do very well in paper 4. I had 99 in paper 4. For paper 4, my strategy was very simple. Focus on your newspapers. Try to get as many examples for as many topics that are there in the newspapers. Make notes of all the topics. For example, I had made notes on all the topics that are in your paper 4, like integrity, the common thing. The contribution, you can't do anything about contribution of moral philosophers. But for example, ethics and human interface, all the topics that are part of it, attitude, all the things that are part of it, I had made very simple notes. And you give examples either from your personal life. अगर कोई personal life में example है तो डाल दो. If not, try and search and read newspapers with a perspective कि हमें भाई examples चाहिए. Ethics तो सबसे vague paper होता है. Ethics का paper is the most vague paper of all the papers. At least you know what to write in case of CBI. You know what to write in case of S400 Triumph. But what do you write in case of integrity? If you write the definition of only integrity, it seems very vague. My perception of integrity may be very different from yours, but then give an example. This is a very simplistic explanation. But again, for the entire paper, for every question, go with an understanding that you have to give example for every question. Without examples, your answers will not look good. Again, a lot of people ask me, do you do case studies first or do you do the theory part first? I think after giving this year's mains, I think doing case studies is much better than doing theory part better. I did theory part first, and by the end of it, after writing 13 questions, I was so tired that I messed up my case studies. At least one or two I messed up. And so I think I ended up getting 99. But I think it's a very personal opinion. I think if you feel comfortable doing case studies after writing your mains, because now you are in the zone, because you've written 13 questions, now you're in the zone of writing answers. Probably that might work wonders for you, but I think personally for me, after writing this year's mains, I think, they give you 10 minutes before paper before starting. I think that is a very good time to read the first case study. So you'll save at least 5 minutes. I made that mistake. I wrote my theory part first, and eventually I was not able to complete my case studies. I completed the paper, but one or two case studies I could not write well because I thought the paper was very lengthy. Apart from that, I think if I were to talk about, should I talk about my geography optional, ma'am? I think not all of you are from, huh? No. Should I talk about my optional a little? Okay. So, okay, I'll talk about it, but I'll keep it very brief. I'll take it maximum 5 minutes, okay? So, as I've already told you, my paper 1 was 51. इसकी स्टोरी बहुत डिफरेंट है. इसकी स्टोरी बहुत डिफरेंट है. Because paper 1, I studied from one place. I think I took coaching from Direction IS. I made notes of paper 1 and paper 2. But paper 1 notes were not very good. So I again went to Ajay Raj Singh's pen drive course. In the first year, I couldn't clear prelims. So I had an entire year. I made verbatim notes of his videos. Verbatim as it is, whatever he said, I made notes of it. And in paper 1, I focused more on my concepts. The books, I can't say that I read from Savindra Singh or I read from D.S. Lal. But I focused mainly on understanding the concepts. And again, there are 2-3 things which I can't emphasize enough. Revision and tests. Total test I wrote were around 26 to 30. I don't remember the exact number. Within 3 months, I wrote around 26 to 30 tests, and I focused on my optional, and I wrote around 10 tests of optionals. And again, the same drill that I followed in my GS papers, which helped me fetch around 429 marks. Okay, out of 1000, I think this is more than sufficient that I could have asked for. The same thing happened here also. In every question, I gave example. Every question, example. And in paper 2, I focused more on giving, there are certain things that I did. For example, read newspapers very well. Secondly, focus on case studies, diagrams. For example, there was a question on discuss the distribution of different varieties of coal in India. So you don't have to draw a diagram of India to show यार यहाँ पे coal मिलता है. Draw a diagram of Jharkhand. Draw a diagram of Chhattisgarh. Draw diagrams of West Bengal. Okay, draw diagrams of Gujarat and show these are the different sites where coal is found. This is what is referred to as a regional perspective. And if you are giving examples of your regional perspective, you will get very good marks. I'm going to be very brief here. Again, there was a question in paper 2, Indian Geography. Interlinking of rivers. For interlinking of rivers, give examples and give case studies. For example, this is Ganga, this is Yamuna, and this is Kane, and this is Betwa. डोंट ड्रॉ जस्ट दिस दैट दिस इज अ इंटरलिंकिंग रिवर, हो गया बस, ओके ये नहीं करना है. उसके बाद राइट यार यहाँ पे नॉर्दर्न डैम है, I'll draw the exact diagram that I draw in my paper. Then show that there is, I think somewhere here, there is a lower ore dam. Okay, there's a lower ore dam. Here there is a city called Khajuraho, Chhatarpur, and all this. Now this also, there is Panna Tiger Reserve. Now this looks like a very detailed diagram. And this is something that you can follow in your GS papers also, in some questions, not all the questions, but this is something that can be followed. So this is a regional perspective that you can give in your geography answers. Apart from that, in every question give example. There was a question on Project Tiger. I gave examples of which tiger reserves under Project Tiger are doing very well. Give data, like for example, Tiger Census of India will come to your rescue. In questions on cloudburst, give examples. कहाँ पे cloudburst हुआ है? For example, Uttarakhand floods of 2013. In a question on landslides, give as many examples as possible. So this is my basic strategy, that focusing on understanding concepts in paper 1 and giving examples, diagram and everything in paper 2. Now I think that's more than sufficient because not all of you have geography optional, right? Now I'll come to the most important part of my studying, newspapers. I read 2 newspapers, Indian Express and Mint. And again, I'll thank the previous topper, Vaishali Singh, because she used to read Mint and she has said in one of her interviews that she used to read Mint, so I followed it up from there. I did not read Hindu primarily, no, that's a personal opinion, that Hindu did not cover a lot of things. Hindu did not have an explained section every day. Indian Express has an explained section, right? You like it, na? How many of you read Hindu? How many of you read Indian Express? Okay, ये मेरा बैच है. So, how many of you read Mint? Okay. So, you see, I did not read in Hindu because I thought iska orientation, the very general reason, is very anti-government. Okay. I liked reading Indian Express because I realized that, okay, I come from background where English was a common language, but even then I find it difficult to understand everything that is given in Hindu. I thought Indian Express is much easier. Okay, देखो है तो लोग अच्छे अच्छे. So that's the sole reason. Apart from that, I think explain section is very good in Hindu, in Indian Express. Hindu में तो होता ही नहीं है. Apart from that, I think उनके एडिटोरियल्स भी बहुत अच्छे होते हैं. जो राइट हैंड साइड में बड़ा वाला एडिटोरियल आता है, हाउ इंटरैक्टिव इट इज. So also you need to develop your interest in reading newspaper. Again, I will say a lot of people tell you, secondly, the second thing that I want to talk about, a lot of people tell you that, okay, I'll complete it within 45 minutes, right? कि 45 minutes में newspaper reading हो जाएगा. Every day, I used to read newspapers for 3 hours. Now again, that is a very personal thing. That is a very personal thing. I know a lot of people do not have time. I only had 3 months, but I had told myself, in the first attempt, I did not give examples. In the first attempt, my quality of answers was not very good because I was just reading those traditional, typical, technical sources, which everyone has read. And I thought the only thing new that I'm reading every day is a newspaper, right? So something new that you are adding to your studying is your newspapers, right? So I focused only, I thought that mains 365 तो end में आती है ना, तो in the last few months I'll focus more on mains 365 and revise it at least 2-3 times. But before that, my focus was on reading newspapers for 3 hours. Again, that is a very personal thing. If you don't like to read 2 newspapers, that's well and fine. If you love reading 2 newspapers, you are my friend. Okay. So 3 and 1.5 hour every day, and I used to read them together. But I never read them in the morning because morning में मेरा दिमाग तो नहीं चलता है. I like studying subjects which I've already studied, which I'm comfortable, ताकि थोड़ा momentum बने सुबह, लगे भाई 2-3 बजे तक कि हाँ भाई पढ़ाई हो गई है. So after reading geography, I used to feel, okay, I've done at least 5-6 hours every day. I've done 5-6 hours now, अब 12 घंटे बचे, उसमें 4-6 घंटे पढ़ लेंगे तो 10 घंटे हो जाएगा. तो मैं तो I used to read them from around 10 in the morning, 10 in the night till 1 a.m. I think around I used to sleep around. I'll come to my schedule later. So Indian Express, I used to read it because it's explain section. The English is easy, and I think the orientation is very pro-government, not astutely anti-government, which means not for the sake of being anti-government. You understand my point, right? And Mint is a very good newspaper. Mint's orientation is very pro-government. It will give you fact, figures, and data. If you see the newspaper Mint, the front page, every day there is also a half page which you can flip and flop like this, okay? There is an explained section here every day in Mint. This is not as big as the Indian Express, but every day some topic related to economy is explained in this section, okay? And if you flip it, either there is a fact sheet kind of a thing where data is given, whether, okay, they will write this big, 5.3% inflation, okay, 7% inflation, and in the other side there will be what are the causes for inflation. So you're getting direct information every day, and it is very small also, so you will find it easy to read. If you flip at the back, the last 2 pages are editorial, but before the editorial there's also a big page called long story. Only those people who read Mint will know. Again, I'm not recommending it to everyone. It's up to your personal choice. Just look at the newspaper. If you find it comfortable, you read it. They will discuss one entire issue in the entire page. There was a question on cryptocurrency in paper 1, right? They had discussed about digital currency in entire page, and they discussed every minute details related to that. So I think this really worked in my favor, and again I used to give 1.5 hours for every newspaper. I used to read it very thoroughly, and this is something that really worked in my favor because I was able to utilize, I never made notes of examples. But this has to be complemented with test series. When I started studying in the October, I wrote my first test on 28th. And then I started regularly writing tests from the mid-November till the end of December. Till mid-November, I was reading newspaper like it's a duty, okay? Because पढ़ना है तो पढ़ना है. There is no exception to it. There cannot be any alternative to it. पढ़ना है तो पढ़ना है. After 15, when I started writing test, I started because I've already told you my orientation has been to write as many examples. So the very first paper when I wrote, writing example was a very difficult thing. To write example in every question became a very tough thing. I felt I'm going to sleep, and in fact during the first paper I felt like sleeping 3-4 times, but somehow I managed to complete my paper. But then when I started reading newspaper and I gave one example from Mint, not because I was thinking कि वो example कहाँ से आया, but I just gave an example, and then I realized that example was from Mint. From the next day onwards, I realized how I can use my examples. Because unless you're writing as many tests as possible and you're using the information that you've generated from your newspapers in the test, you will not find reading newspaper interesting. After 15th November, reading newspaper became interesting for me and not only a stoic duty. You understand? So this all has to be complemented with writing answers. Again, if you are reading newspapers like Mint and Indian Express, you will get a lot of information with everything. It really helped me in my geography optional because Indian Express also talked about interlinking of rivers. Indian Express also there was a question on interstate disputes in my optional paper 2. Indian Express covered it in great detail, that dispute that was going on over Belgaum between Maharashtra and Karnataka. So you have examples. So again, the point is the same. If you know again, this all has to be done with answer writing. Again, I'll come to answer writing. That similar drill that everyone follows was mine: introduction, body, and conclusion. Last time in the second attempt, I did not follow any of it. And I only focused on what was the body part, and I ended up scoring not very good marks. I missed the cutoff by 13 marks. And this happened because I did not focus on all the three aspects. Now, conclusion is not maybe not that important, but introduction becomes important because you are asking the examiner to go into your question. So by the end of it, he already knows what you've written. He's not interested in your answer anymore because he's already given you marks checking how well you've written your body. That's my personal view. After that, my focus was more on examples. And this happened because I read newspapers, both Indian Express and the Mint. The more you can fetch examples from your newspapers into your answer writing, the more interesting your newspaper reading becomes. Because then you are actively searching for examples. In the Mint, there was the Mint has done Mint or the Indian Express had done an entire interview of Shashi Tharoor, in which he was talking how his committee is not working well. I gave that example in the paper 2 committee question. Parliamentary standing committees are not functioning properly. That is how, and I was able to remember that example because you remember something which you find interesting, isn't it? You don't remember things which you don't find interesting. Unless you find something interesting, you won't remember it. And how do you make reading newspapers interesting? By incorporating examples from newspapers into your answer writing. Apart from that, I think I did not do anything specifically for answer writing. Just that I wrote around 26 to 28 tests or 30 tests, I don't remember, out of which I think 26 to 80 tests, out of which 10 were optional because I focused specifically on my optional. Because you see, general studies have a ceiling. It's not that UPSC says so officially, but it's very difficult to. Have you seen people scoring 150s in GS papers? Okay, that 1 year exception of ethics, leaving that exception aside, 162, I think I think Vishakha Yadav got 162 in ethics. If you leave that exception aside, do you see people scoring 140s very easily in GS papers? No, na. Similar thing works in case of paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, paper 4. Even in ethics, it's very rare to see people scoring 140s, right? So I realized that writing that in your GS, there is a ceiling. To go beyond that ceiling, it is very difficult. Even I was not expecting 120s in my GS paper 1. But when does UPSC does so? So are you going to leave it entirely to the fate or fortune? No, na. So that's why I focused specifically on my optional, because optional you get, I think somebody this year even has 170 in one of his optional paper. So you see, if you focus on your optional while writing answers, so that's why I focused more on like 10 answers. Out of those 26 to 28 tests, I wrote 10 tests of geography, and all these tests were in a simulated environment, which means अगर 2 क्वेश्चन बच भी गए हैं and I don't have time left, I will not write the answer. पर ये कभी हुआ नहीं, because you have to manage it. If you find that some question you are lagging behind, leave it, go to the other question. और एक चीज जो which I find in a lot of people is that they will write first question, second question, third question, fourth question हम leave कर देते हैं because I don't know it right back and then fifth, sixth, seventh question हम बाद में आएंगे इस question पे, right? होता है? Don't leave it, you never come back. Okay? नहीं आते हो वापस. Okay? Please don't leave it, okay? You never come back. I've never come back. I know a lot of people never come back. And even if you come back, you've written so many questions that your mind is already exhausted. So write then and there itself. And never leave a question in your paper. Never ever leave a question in your paper. Leaving questions, I see people leaving questions worth 50, 60 marks in one paper. That's a disaster, okay? If you're leaving an entire paper, okay, all the papers combined, 7, 8 papers, that may be understandable. But if you're leaving questions like this, that is not at all reasonable. I'll tell you, there was a question on how have the recommendations of 14th Finance Commission being implemented, something like that. I did not know much, but I wrote answer as if I know everything. Okay, if there are 2 pages like this, I think for 10 marker they give you 1.5 page or 2 pages. I think they gave 2 pages. I wrote everything. I think there was only one question in my entire GS papers where I left a blank space of this blank space. And this was, I think, in one of the case studies. I will always write answer from the question number 1 till question number 20 and never leave a question behind. Because वही होता है कि you never come back to that question. Or even if you come back to that question, you've come back with an exhausted mind and you don't want to write, or you don't write it very well. So better complete it then and there itself. क्योंकि एक stretch of thought हो जाता है ना, you are writing answers completely, you are creating continuity in your answers, and suddenly this examiner sees you have filled one page, sees you have left one page, उसके दिमाग में जाएगा ना एक perception. This man does not know some things. I think this perception should not go into somebody's mind. And I've always made sure that even if I know nothing about it, I write as if I know everything about it. Okay, ऐसे लिखना है. Because somebody, देखो मुझे तो पता है ना कि मुझे नहीं पता है. लेकिन somebody who is checking your answers, he's entering that answer knowing you know something, because a general tendency is that okay, this chap might not have written a very good answer, but he would have some average knowledge तो होगी उसको. इस perception के साथ examiner check करता है ना copy, तो उसे वो examiner perception बनी रहने, तो क्यों तोड़ना चाहते हो भाई? Write something, don't leave कि भाई हम वापस आके लिखेंगे. Don't mess that up. Okay, that's one thing that I never did. मैंने कभी question नहीं छोड़ा. Started from question number 1, ended till question number 20. That was my approach. A lot of people do write 15 marker first. अब मेरे को तो साइकोलॉजिकल प्रॉब्लम है, जब तक मैं पीछे वाले पेजेस मुड़े ना देखूं तो मेरे को मज़ा नहीं आता है. ठीक है, दैट्स माई पर्सनल थिंग. आई कांट, इवन इफ आई नो द लास्ट क्वेश्चन एक्सीलेंटली वेल, आई विल नॉट गो टू इट. Even if the first 19 questions are very tough, I will never go to the 20th question. I will always write question number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I think that approach really worked for me. I have 429 in GS. I think I could not have asked for more. Apart from that, writing examples, case studies, complementing with current affairs becomes extremely important. And I followed only 2 sources for current affairs. Newspaper reading every day. And secondly, I followed Mains 365 very religiously. When I'm saying religiously, actually like religiously. Not everything I followed only some few things. ऐसे interlinking of river पे focus कर लिया. ठीक है, CBI वाले question पे मैंने बहुत focus किया था because वो current debate में चल रहा था. So you have to focus on certain specific issues. Not everything is very important. और ऐसा भी होगा आपको कि आप कुछ चीज़ छोड़ के जाओ कि आई फाइंड इट वेरी अनइम्पॉर्टेंट, और वो आ भी जाए, ऐसा भी होता है. बट एटलीस्ट यू आर एबल टू कंप्लीट योर मेंस 365 बाई 60-70 पेजेस की बुक्स होती हैं, एंड देयर आर अराउंड 8 or 9 ऑफ मेंस 365, राइट? To complete it thoroughly along with revising your basic books is a very difficult task. It's a very tall task to ask. That's why focus only on what is important. If you know what is important, if you have been focusing on current affairs very well in the newspapers, which I did, I eventually came to realize that there are only some things which are very important in Mains 365. And I used to read, I never read book format. I had downloaded them and I read it online, और मैं mark कर देता था using markers. No, online markers are available. So I used to mark the most important in green and थोड़ा मोड़ा important in yellow. And that was my color scheme. It happened in some questions. And I think the percentage of success was high, which means if I marked certain question, the probability of it being asked was high, and it actually happened. So I think that really helped in my favor. Apart from that, I've already told you that examples are a must and everything. I think with respect to the UPSC's interview, the most, I think, unpredictable thing, I think, this time I have got very good marks in my written. Okay, I'll show. Look, in paper, in essay, I have 128. In paper 1, I have 120. In paper 2, I have 119. In paper 3, GS papers, I have I have 91. In paper 4, I have 99. In optional paper 1, I have 156. In optional paper 2, I have 150. So this comes down to 863. Okay. Now this is a very good score. I just looked at my this year's marks. Marks तो आ गए हैं ना सारे. So this is amongst the top 5 this year. But I ended up getting a rank 12 because of interview. Okay. So last year my interview board was Satyavati ma'am. She gave me 173. Okay. And still I don't know why she gave me 173. You see, interview board is usually very professional. Okay, they will ask you very good questions. And they will never let you know how you are doing. Okay? And this time they even let me know how I was doing. The last member even complimented me very good. And I thought, yaar, maine to foड़ diya. And this year they gave me 162. Okay. So, and last year तो मैंने सारे online mock लिए थे. This year I took 4 offline mocks. विजन में नहीं लिया, मेरा टाइम ही नहीं था. मेरा इंटरव्यू तो बहुत पहले था, 7 अप्रैल को था. ओके, 17 को आई थिंक कितने लोगों का रिजल्ट आके होली खराब हो गई थी. हैं? हुई थी? हैं? सो उसके बाद आई थिंक 23 को लिस्ट आ गई थी इंटरव्यू की. एंड माई फ्रेंड टोल्ड मी, मुझे तो पता भी नहीं था लिस्ट आ गई. माई फ्रेंड टोल्ड मी, ब्रो आर इंटरव्यू इज ऑन 7th. His interview was also on 7th. You see, I come from economics graduate. मेरा जो batch था वो 2018 में graduate हुआ था. Eco honors 2018. There were 5 people from our class itself who qualified for interview. उनमें से 4 का 2 दिन में था, 6th and 7th में, क्योंकि सब दिल्ली में रहते थे. So I thought, यार दिल्ली क्यों भर दिया, थोड़ा सा टाइम मिल जाता. But anyway, I think from 23rd till 7th, I took four mocks, in-person mocks, where I sat in front of a board to answer questions. Even that didn't work, and still I don't know why I ended up with 162, because personally, if you asked me which interview went better, I think this one went better. So it doesn't mean that you don't have to prepare for your interview. The drill is the same. You have to prepare your DAF well. Every word in your DAF you should know, because they will ask you. Not everyone, but sometimes the interview goes entirely on your DAFs. Sometimes it goes on a lot of factual questions which have nothing to do with your DAF, nothing to do with your opinion. And sometimes the interviews are completely opinion based. The 173 interview that I gave, it was 80% opinion based. And this 162 opinion interview that I gave, it was 95% I think fact based. And even after being fact based 95%, I was able to answer at least 80% to 85% questions. There were hardly few questions which I couldn't answer. But still, you don't know why you get such few marks. You see, and that's why I have told you, focus on answer writing. I think for this I have to thank another topper, Samia Sharma, rank 9. You must have heard about her. She used to say a lot that write answers. And I think her marks in GS paper 2 and 3 were like 140s, 143. अब UPSC उतने marks नहीं देता है. I think for the last 2-3 years they have reduced the amount of marks they're giving in paper 1 and paper 2 and paper 3. Especially paper 3, it's very difficult to even reach the 100 marks barrier. Okay, but मैं तो ये कहूँगा कि focus on your answer writing. If you have aced your answer writing, your dependence on interview will become less. See, this year I have done so well in my written that even after getting 162, I have ended up with the rank. Okay, so if I hadn't done that well in my written, I wouldn't have landed a rank. Okay, so the best thing about interview is that you have to prepare every word of DAF, where you are from. I think a lot of things are part of your DAF. I think your native place. You should fill your hobbies very well. अगर कोई हॉबी भी है नहीं पता मत भरो. Okay. And sometimes grilling will also happen. Okay, not every board, I think one such board is there which does not do grilling much. But you know, you have to go with an open mind. If you're preparing for UPSC, you'll have to accept the fact that there will be unpredictabilities involved. ठीक है, तो ग्रिलिंग भी हो सकती है. एंड ड्यूरिंग ग्रिलिंग डोंट लूज योर माइंड, डोंट लूज योर कूल. इफ यू हैव रीच देयर देन यू हैव द पोटेंशियल. ओके, एवरीवन शुड अंडरस्टैंड द फैक्ट. भाई आज जिनका नहीं हुआ डज नॉट मीन दे आर फूल्स. मेरा आई थिंक आई विल टेल यू माई स्टोरी. जस्ट 7-8 months बैक, September 24 को रिजल्ट आया था लास्ट ईयर. अक्टूबर, नवंबर, दिसंबर, जनवरी, फरवरी, मार्च, अप्रैल, मे. हाउ मेनी मंथ? 8 months. 8 months back, I was crying in my room. Okay? I took a selfie while crying. Okay? I'll tell you, I took a selfie while crying to remind myself that these were my bad days. Okay? I took a selfie of mine to remind myself that this is the bad, this is the worst I can get to. Because I was expecting my rank, I was expecting not rank, I was expecting my names in the list because I had always been a very good student. क्लास 9 में मेरा 9, क्लास 12 में मेरा 99% था ISC में. ठीक है, तो अरे कुछ भी ठीक है. ओके, क्लास 12th में I had 99%, so I have taken for granted, भाई I know everything, I can write everything. बट यूपीएससी विल हम्बल यू. औकात पे आ गए हम. ठीक है, तो जब आंसर राइटिंग, व्हेन आई स्टार्टेड आंसर राइटिंग, आई नो एवरीथिंग. एंड दिस वाज द मिस्टेक आई मेड इन माय सेकंड अटेम्प्ट. आई वाज टॉकिंग अबाउट माय मिस्टेक्स इन द फर्स्ट अटेम्प्ट. फर्स्ट अटेम्प्ट आई मेड द मिस्टेक ऑफ नॉट डूइंग अ सिंगल टेस्ट फॉर प्रीलिम्स. आई एंडेड अप विद अ स्कोर ऑफ 83, राइट? इन द सेकंड अटेम्प्ट आई डिड नॉट राइट अ सिंगल मेंस टेस्ट. बस एक विजन वालों का एसए का लिख दिया था, उन्होंने 85 दे दिए थे, फिर मैंने हाथ जोड़ लिए थे. आई डिड नॉट राइट अ सिंगल मेंस टेस्ट बिकॉज आई थॉट नेचुरली यार, इफ आई एम गेटिंग 99% इन माई बोर्ड्स, आई हैव ऑलवेज बीन अ गुड राइटर. ठीक है, सो आई विल एंड अप गेटिंग गुड मार्क्स. एंड दैट वाज द मोस्ट हम्बलिंग मोमेंट ऑफ माई लाइफ. just imagine 7-8 months back, I had nothing. I wanted a rank so bad, and I was so sad, I was crying. I was sitting just beside my mother and I was not saying any single thing. I was so depressed. आज क्या हो गया? And I remember when I opened the result last year, I think it came around 5:36. I think वो जानबूझ के उस टाइम पे निकालते हैं ताकि nobody can call them. ठीक है, तो I search my name, Ctrl+G. I think Ctrl+G उसमें चलता है भाई. I वो एप्पल है ना, एप्पल वाला, तो मैक उसमें काम करता है. Ctrl+G, यशार्थ शेखर. एंड मैंने सो 0 रिजल्ट, ये क्या हो गया? 0 आउट ऑफ इतने, 0 आउट ऑफ 0, ये पता नहीं क्या था. सो आई वॉज शॉक्ड for the moment. You know, I started standing like this. So you see, and then I went to my bedroom. I cried a lot. I'm not going to say I didn't cry. I'm built a, you know, I'm very strong. Okay, I'm not that strong. You know, everyone has its downs, and you see, when we say UPSC is full of up and downs, भाई up कौन सा आता है? अब तो अभी आया है ना. when you get selected तभी तो up आया, और कौन सा up आएगा? But downs तो इतने होते हैं कि you are going on a ride. So for me that was the lowest moment of my life. I've never been that big a failure in my academic life. 2 attempts were over. मेरे बाल तक सफेद होने लगे थे, इधर के देखो. ठीक है, and I started crying in the room, and then I took a selfie to remind myself that this was the lowest point that I can reach to. I think वो फोटो अभी भी होगी मेरे फोन में. Let me check. होगी. Just 1 second. See, this was me. Okay, This was me. This is a very poor photo of mine because I was crying. And this was the one that I took on, see, 24th September, 11:44 p.m. 5 hours after the result came. This was me, you see. And this was the lowest moment of my life. Okay, and I haven't deleted that photo, not because today I've got AIR rank 12, but because to remind myself that there's always a good end if you struggle hard. And what I did after that, just 14 days, and I'm not going to say that I did everything by myself. My parents were standing behind me, my sister was standing behind me, and I had two rabbits also to keep me company. Okay, so one of them died unfortunately, but one of them is still staying with me. So you see, that was the lowest moment of my life. And today, just within 7-8 months, I think I am at the highest point in my life right now. And this has not happened. See, just 3-4 months of extreme hard work. You just have to take pain for 3-4 months, you can do wonders. Okay, if nothing can be an example, I am that example. Okay, nobody, everyone around me used to say, "Arey, to academics mein itna acha hai, he will get in there in the first attempt." But still I struggled. The first mistake that I learned from my prelims attempt is to do test series for prelims. This is the biggest thing that I learned in my life. You have to do prelims. उसने फोटो ले ली थी यार वहाँ पे मेरे उसकी मैं मिस्टेक्स बता रहा हूँ ठीक है. The second thing that I did, अब मेरे दिमाग में वही घूम रहा है बस क्या होगा उसका. You see, the second thing that I did was not to do, listen, the second thing that I did was not to do test series for mains. I think if I can say two things that were game changer for me, my mains marks last year were 758. It increased to 863, an improvement of 105 marks. This happened solely because of two reasons. I was reading newspapers very thoroughly, okay, and I wrote as many tests as I can within that period. And because of that, just within 7-8 months, and see, October 10th, prelims happened. After that, January 7th was the essay paper, okay, 7th essay paper, 8th paper 1, paper 2, 9th paper 3, paper 4, right? And I was able to change everything because I forgot that there is a thing called luxury or desire or happiness during these 3 months. And I'll come to that through my schedule. This was the thing that I did. Just 3-4 months of extreme preparation can give you whatever you want in your life. Just 3-4 months. I told you that was the lowest point of my life, and I reached here because of that only. So if you're studying for UPSC, study like there's no end. Forget all your pleasures, at least for 3 months. Those 3 months can set your entire life, basically. And I'll come to that with my schedule. My schedule was very simple. A lot of people have trouble with schedules. They'll make a very tough schedule जिसमें सांस लेने की भी जगह नहीं होगी. होता है. और जब काउंट करोगे कि how many number of times you're studying, it comes down to around I think 15 hours every day. और जब actual में होता है तो 7 घंटे भी नहीं बनता है. It should be मेरा schedule was very simple. 3 slots. Basically 3 slots were there. The first was for optional, the second one was GS, and the third one for current affairs. Current affairs के टाइम में मैं क्या करता था, या बीच में अगर if there is something to eat, you're taking rest, okay. So rest में you can watch some videos. For example, Cut the Clutter, I used to watch during those rest periods. There's only one Cut the Clutter almost every day, and it's very small, 20 to 30 minutes. Okay, so it's very easy for you to follow. The problem is that we follow a lot of sources. हम करंट व्यू फॉलो कर लेंगे, हम इसको भी फॉलो कर देंगे, हम बिग पिक्चर की डिबेट भी देख लेंगे, ठीक है. आई टुक अ कॉन्शियस डिसीजन कि आई विल नॉट वॉच एनीथिंग एल्स. मतलब थोड़ा मोड़ा छोटे मोटे ओनली आई का कोई मतलब करंट अफेयर्स का कंपाइलेशन हो गया, देख लिया, बट मैं कोई और रेगुलरली नहीं वॉच करता था, नथिंग एल्स. आई विल ओनली वॉच कट द क्लटर ड्यूरिंग ईटिंग, एंड इफ इट ऑल आई हैड सम मोर टाइम I will watch some random episode of Sunset TV. Sometimes morning में थोड़ा सा और motivated है तो All India Radio सुन लिया, like that only. बहुत scattered होता है. This is nothing called so much of regularity in studying. But mainly my slot throughout the day was divided into 3 different parts: optional, GS and current affairs. Now current affairs in the beginning, I was only reading newspapers for 3 hours, and I'm very honest about it, because that time you don't have mains 365, because mains 365 eventually starts to come around the end of I think end of November or the beginning of December. So I don't know, my friend told me that they've come, so I started reading them. So before that, for 3 months I started reading current affairs, and when mains 365 came, I did not reduce this 3 hours of newspaper. Simply I reduced the time I was giving for GS by 1 hour and optional by 1 hour. Still then I read newspaper for 3 hours. I had such a fascination with reading newspapers, I'll tell you. On the 7th of January, when I had my essay paper, I was reading Mint on my way to the examination center, because I did not want to break that continuity. I had developed such continuity, and that continuity happened not because I had to read it every day. That continuity happened because I was interested in reading newspaper. And why was I so interested in newspaper? Because I wanted to extract more and more examples. And why I was so interested in extracting more and more examples? Because I know that there is a validity to it. अब आप कोई काम करो and you realize that इसका तो कोई use नहीं है, you will not be interested in doing that work. But I was reading newspapers and finding it useful, because every day I was reading something which I thought I could use in this topic, I could use in that topic. You understand? I went with that philosophy, and that really worked. So optional ka, in the beginning I started with optional. Why? Because I thought I'll do something in the morning which I know. Okay, in the morning reading newspapers can become very tough, especially for me. Everything is new, you're not into your zone, you're all fresh, you don't know what to do. So there was no specific time allotted to it. There was no specific time allotted to, except for reading newspaper 3 hours. There was nothing specific. कितने घंटे पढ़ना है इसको, कितने घंटे इसको पढ़ना है. There was not at all fixed. Some days I used to, and see, I told you, I showed you my photo. This was the lowest point of my time. So I had to do everything. I had to burn every single last bit of my energy this time. Okay. So sometimes this traditional concept की 2 घंटे पढ़ाई करी, उसके बाद रेस्ट किया, never applied to me. Some days I used to wake up at 8 and used to sleep around 1 to 1:30. So around 6 hours I used to sleep, 6.5 hours. So 8 I used to get up, 8:30 I started studying. 8:30 का मतलब है अगर मैं 8:29 पे भी उठ रहा हूँ, 8:29 पे भी, I have to at studying table at 8:30. This was fixed. The only problem that I really had is my sticking to the schedule, and the best thing about sticking to schedule is to start properly. If you are sticking to 8:30, अगर तुम 8:45 पे भी उठे हो ना, तुम टाइम को पीछे कर दो बस. टाइम को पीछे करने का मतलब you can't do anything about it, okay? But what I'm trying to say is that you never have to get up at 8:45. 8:30 means you have to get there at 8:30. शेड्यूल की सबसे बढ़िया बात यह है कि शेड्यूल को स्टार्ट करना बहुत ज़रूरी है उस टाइम पर. सो 8:30, सम डेज यूजली ऐसा था कि आई वुड स्टडी ऑप्शनल फॉर 4 to 5 hours. सो इफ आई एम स्टार्टिंग एट 8:30, आई विल एंड अप एट 1. बट समटाइम्स आफ्टर स्टडिंग फॉर 5 hours, यू गेट इन द जोन where you know that in 1 hour you can do 3 hours of studying. So I used to stretch that. So usually usual schedule would look like 8:30 till 1. Okay, then I would take a rest of around 1 to 1.5 hour and start from either 2 or 2:30 I used to study till 6. Okay, and then I'll take a rest of 1 to 2 hours. I'll study current affairs from 7 to 10, and 10 to 1 also. I'll come to that. How did I do that 10 to 10? Sometimes this was a usual thing, but some days I liked but if I would some days skip general studies altogether. I would never study it, but I would never skip that 3-hour thing. Why? Some days I used to sit at 8:30 and get up at 5:30. No break whatsoever in between. My mother used to get so angry at this. खाने तो आ जाओ कुछ. But I had seen my low. I had seen the lowest point of my life. This was nothing compared to that. I know what a man can fall to, or what anyone can fall to, in fact, for that matter. So for me, that pain of sitting from 8:30, when I used to sit at 8:30, never for a second I would leave my chair. And this some days, I think the maximum that I did was 8:30 till 7. I'm not saying this because this is just looks so good कि भाई मैं कितना पढ़ने वाला बच्चा हूँ. This is something because I had a determination कि geography में मुझे अच्छा करना है, and I would study only geography for that amount of time. Never did I study optional. Never did I study GS for that amount of time. GS would always be for 4 hours. Optional में ऐसा है कि you know what you are studying. Optional has this capability that you know what you're writing. There is no other subject in your entire preparation for which you are so much prepared as your optional. So optional I was prepared. Okay. So मैंने decide कर लिया था कि only this, if I can study a subject continuously for 10 hours or 7 hours or 8 hours, this happened rarely. This did not happen all days, but whenever this happened only with optional, because I loved my optional. First of all, again, one of the reasons for choosing my geography optional was that because I loved it. I could keep reading it continuously. I was not part of the social commentary कि आसपास हो रही थी कि यार geography में तो marks ही नहीं आ रहा है. Last year I read I think the 12th ranker Mithun Premraj. He got the highest marks of geography, I think 287. And the first question that I asked my mother on that day, I clicked that photograph. Should I change my optional? That is a very natural question that will come to you. And I said no. My mother said no. My father told me no. So you already know enough. I had 251 marks last attempt in geography. And I focused so much on it. So if I study till 7, I would take a break of at least 2-3 hours. I will watch a movie, do something, but I will never miss this 3 hours okay, I will never miss that 3 hours of newspaper reading. Newspaper reading was there were 2 things that I would do every day for those 3 months. Newspaper reading and optional. Both of them really helped me. About GS, I would study only one GS at a time. If I'm studying for 4 hours, it would be either history, either modern India. Since this was my third attempt, this was the third attempt of mine, so I'd already made notes of most of the topics. I've already told you I made notes of spectrum, modern India, and everything. So by the time I was done with it, since this was my third attempt, I did not have to spend so much time on GS. So if you are preparing your schedule, don't make schedules like from 7 to 9 I will study this, from 9:30 to 11:30 I will study this. Okay, this is normal way of making schedule, right? From I think 1 to 4 I would study this. I think make broad dimensions. Decide that there are only 3 things for you to study in UPSC. What are those 3 things? What did I do? ऑप्शनल पढ़ना है, एक चीज़ तो ऑप्शनल पढ़नी है आपको, दूसरा जीएस पढ़ना है, तीसरा करंट अफेयर्स पढ़ना है, राइट? इज देयर एनीथिंग एल्स दैट यू हैव टू स्टडी फॉर मेंस? सो स्लॉट, ये एक स्लॉट में, ये एक स्लॉट में, ये एक स्लॉट में. नाउ यू हैव द फ्रीडम टू स्टडी इधर पेपर 1 और पेपर 2, राइट? एंड यू हैव द फ्रीडम टू स्टडी any GS paper, right? This leaves you with the freedom, right? And current affairs दिस हैज़ टू बी कंपल्सरी फॉर मी. मेरा तो कंपल्सरी था कि 3 घंटे तो कहीं नहीं जा रहे हैं. एंड इनको मिला करके मेरा एवरेज स्टडी आवर्स वॉज आई थिंक मोर देन 12 आवर एवरी डे. आई थिंक मोर देन 12 आवर का मतलब 14-15 घंटे नहीं, बट आई थिंक इट शुड बी अराउंड 12-12.5 आवर्स एवरी डे. एंड दिस वॉज अ पेन दैट आई वॉज विलिंग टू सफ़र दिस टाइम. और ऐसा है, देखो, आई हैव स्ट्रगल्ड अ लॉट फॉर दिस. 3 अटेम्प्ट्स में बहुत स्ट्रगल हो जाता है. नाउ एवरीथिंग डजंट फील, नॉट अ सिंगल थिंग फील्स लाइक अ स्ट्रगल. आई एम टेलिंग यू फ्रॉम माई पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस. 4 दिन नहीं हुए रैंक आए हुए. Whenever I think of my journey, whenever I think of that photograph, it's an inspiration for me. Not some other random photograph. I click that photo, you know, sometimes I laugh when I click that photo, but I click that photo to remind myself that this is the lowest I can reach. Okay? This was the lowest point in my life. I'm not going to fall any further. And this motivated me कि यार थोड़े टाइम के लिए अगर if I'm not enjoying, थोड़े टाइम के लिए अगर फोमो हो भी रहा है, फियर ऑफ मिसिंग आउट, डजंट मैटर. सो इफ आई कैन टेल समथिंग टू यू अबाउट यूपीएससी इज दैट 7 months में आप क्या नहीं कर सकते हो. आफ्टर दैट यू एंजॉय योर एंटायर लाइफ ना. you enjoy your entire life after you've cleared UPSC, right? Obviously you would have to work. Nobody enjoys. But then I am giving you my example. That this, I think everyone is clear with this, no? This was my thing. I never made a schedule like this because even I sort of find it very difficult to follow a schedule like this. Very difficult for me to follow. कि 2 घंटे ऐसे पढ़ना, 2 घंटे में तो आप फॉर्म में आते हो, फिर आउट हो जाते हो. Okay? नहीं, doesn't the commentator says that this man is looking at the cricket ball like a football because he is in the zone, right? हाँ, उसी टाइम आप आउट हो जाते हो. मतलब T20 में you want to play, you want to stay longer at the pitch, you play slowly, you run a ball, and when you have to accelerate, you get out. Okay? केएल राहुल करता है भाई वो, you know. तो अब हम केएल राहुल तो नहीं बन सकते ना. So you have to go bang bang, and for that I've already told you that this is the best thing. I think this works very well because then इससे आपको पता रहेगा कि you have the freedom and never fixed. मैं तो कभी नहीं, अब this is my personal opinion. If you feel comfortable with this, you are more than fine. But optional में I used to give more time because I used to get into zones. Whenever I used to study for 2-3 hours, I used to get in zone where within the next 15 minutes, I will be able to study what I will in the next 2 hours. If I started studying in that amount, I used to study for 2-3 hours. Within 15 hours, I can cover 2 hours of study. So I started studying optional very, very efficiently that way. And I was able to cover it multiple times. So if at the conclusion, I can say one thing, it's just very simple that if you have come into UPSC, you will have to face a lot of problem. Look, not everyone is like those people who clear it in the first attempt. I think this year, there is, I think 11th ranker has cleared in first, Shubhankar. I think he cleared it in the first attempt. I think talked to him yesterday. मज़ा आता है भाई IAS लोगों से बात करने में अब. ठीक है. तो देखो ऐसा है कि you will have to face a lot of struggle, but you have to own it up. You know what you're doing wrong. Everyone knows if he is studying or not. You know in your minds whether you are studying or not. And if you really want to do something with your life, especially if you come into the field of UPSC, you'll have to work really hard for it. And give 2-3 months, give 1 year of your life. Forget about everything that is going on the outside. You will do wonders. Just 4-5 months of my life, and I am that prime example. I showed you that photograph. I'm not lying about anything, okay? That was a very bad phase of my life. And and to add misery to my sorrows, on that very day I caught cold. And the first 2 days of cold is very tough. And it's because of COVID, the results came in September. And for 7 months I hadn't touched a book. So now I had to study with cold and cough. Only 16 days were left. And up above that, I had this mental hangover कि मैंने पूरा पत्थर ऊपर पहाड़ के ऊपर डाला. Now it has come down again. Because you have to start from the prelims, right? You're nothing if you're not in the list, right? 0. You reached from 0 to 99, then you come again back to 0, right? इसके साथ पढ़ना था. On that very day, 11:44 को तो ये किया है. 10:30 पे I bought Vision IS test series. मैं इतना कॉन्फिडेंट था कि I hadn't even purchased the test series. See, not a single test series मैंने purchase करी थी. इतना कॉन्फिडेंट था मैं, super confident. And then I did a test. I got, I think, 110 or 19, I don't remember. And my mother said, "You're well to go." That was a confidence boosting thing. Then I went to my room, cried again, took a photo. And then again, next day, to get up next day out of bed and to sit and study was very difficult. But I can say one thing in conclusion, that if I can do it, everyone else can. Everyone else can, but you just have to let go of few things in life for a few months, and then you will have everything in your life. Okay?